Hey everybody, guess who's back? I'm Charlie Craven, and today I'm going to tie for you a fly from a friend of mine, Andrew Grillos. This is Andrew Grillos's Hippy Stomper, and while I've taken a few liberties on adding an extra set of legs on this one and dressing them up a little bit, this is pretty much his original pattern. And this fly is sort of a modern version of a humpy, which has, always had a special place in my heart. So this is sort of a foam-bodied version of a humpy, quite a bit easier to tie, but probably floats better, given that it's got the foam body and a macrame yarn wing. Now Andrew, on his original, uses McFlylon for the wing, but I've sort of replaced McFlylon with macrame yarn. They're the same material. The macrame yarn just has got a little bit more crinkle to it, so a little more surface area out of it. So if you've got McFlylon, feel free to use that. So I'm going to twist one of these up and show you these little tricks that I came up with to make this a little easier. So I'm going to pop that hook out of the vise, and I'm going to put a Tiemco 3761. This is a size 10, I think. Yeah, size 10 in my vise here. Let's get us all focused up there. There we go. Now I'm going to start off with some 14-aught black Veevus. And you can tie the micro Hippy Stomper. It's really tied the same way, but it's tied on a Umpqua stubby T hook, and you can do that down to a 16 or 18, so little tiny attractors. But obviously that fly is something that you can hang a dropper under, or fish in fast pockety water, and it'll still be buoyant and visible. So I'm going to start this 14-aught thread just about midpoint on the hook. And I want to make a nice thread base back to the bend. And when I get there, I'm going to use a little bit of moose hair. So this can be moose body or moose hawk. I know moose hawk's getting hard to find these days. This is a chunk of moose hawk that I've got here because it ain't that hard to find in my office. But out in the world, it's a little tougher. But moose body will work just fine here. And I'm going to stack up a fairly heavy clump. Andrew ties these as an attractor dry, so a fairly heavy clump of moose hair here. And I'm going to measure it just a little short of a shank length long. So really, from just behind the eye right there, just to where the thread's hanging, I'd still say that's a shank length long. And I'm going to tie that in right at the bend here. I want to catch it on top of the hook. So it's a fairly solid, chunky tail there. And I'm going to wrap over those butt ends up to just short of where I started the thread. If I lift these up just right for you, you can see my thread base comes forward from there a little bit. I'm going to go maybe even a couple more turns. And what I'm trying to do is keep this underbody even. And when I cut it off, it should be right exactly even with where I started the thread. Like so. Now I'm going to leave the thread up on the lump, the volume that we've got tied in there. And before I tie the foam in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and put just a little shot of super glue. I like to do this on any foam flies. Foam flies tend to turn on the hook because you just never really get that foam all the way compressed. So I like to put a little shot of super glue on that hook. And then what I've got here are 2 strips of razor foam. These are 1 millimeter razor foam. And I've got a black one and a Chartreuse one. I'm going to tie a Chartreuse Hippy Stomper. So I'm going to take, and I've cut these just about as wide as the gap of the hook. I'm going to take the black one first, and I'm going to tie it in at the front end of these butt ends. And I want to take kind of a soft turnaround. You can see how that foam will buckle around the hook. And I want to make sure that it's centered up on top. Get a couple turns on it, and then I'll just spiral wrap back over it to the base of the tail. Now one thing I like to do here is pull that forward and make sure that there's no thread showing behind that tail, just like on a humpy. Then I'll cross my thread back forward, and I'll take my piece of Chartreuse foam, and I'm going to do the same thing there. Got a weird little notch in this one. So I'm going to tie this Chartreuse in right on top and spiral wrap back over it right up to the base of the black. And again, try to make sure everything's right square on top of the hook. And then I'm going to cross hatch back and forth here and compress that tie down. Now I want to make this pretty smooth, so I tend to go back and forth a couple times, and you'll see some of those initial thread wraps may get a little loose as you tighten the rest of them up. So you want to kind of come back and forth over that to smooth that out a bit, like so. So now for the underbody, in the case of this one, you could use lime-colored Flashabou, but I'm going to use some medium holographic tinsel in olive, and this is kind of a nice contrast on this one. So I'm going to take a piece of this, and my thread's hanging at the front of that underbody. I'm going to catch that with 2 or 3 turns right at that front edge, and I'm going to wrap this tinsel back toward the bend in overlapping turns all the way back to the base of the tail, and you want to make sure that you're right up to the base of the tail. Then I'll come forward again, so we're making a double layer tinsel body here. And my thread is still hanging up on top of the bulk of that tie off. And I'll tie that tinsel off there and clip that out. Now I like to kind of make a few extra turns there just to clean that edge up. You can see that can get a little ugly if you left that as it were. And then I'll bring the thread all the way up to the hook eye and back again. You can see I'm kind of leaving that thread twisted so that it's a little corrugated. That'll give us a smoother, or a better base, not so smooth, to anchor this foam down to. And we're going to use a little bit more glue as well. So now I'm going to take just another little shot of glue. I like to do this at any of the tie down points. Right on the edge of that hump, and then right down where my thread's hanging. You can see it's very little. Now, when I go to fold this foam over, I want to fold the Chartreuse first. I want to do this in 2 separate batches. So I'm going to fold the Chartreuse first. I'm going to tie it off just off the front edge. You can see my thread's down on the bare hook here. I want to tie this foam off again with a soft turn and buckle it around the hook a couple of turns. And then I'll fold my black over the top and tie it off in the same spot. And I try to make sure these thread wraps are very square to form that little hump, like so. So now I'm going to lift these butt ends up. I'll bring my thread up to just behind the hook. I'm going to leave myself a little bit of room there. And then I'll put another little shot of glue. I'm trying to do this so you can see it. Might need a little more gravity. That's this. There we go. Another little shot of glue on that thread underneath. And I'll fold both sheets of foam forward this time. And I'll tie them off just behind the eye. You can see we're kind of creating a large segment there in between. We're going to eventually bind this one down. This is where our hackle and wing is going to go. So now I'm going to cross hatch back over this and just sort of anchor it in place. And remember, you've got the glue under there. And that'll help to anchor everything and keep it square. So make sure it's square now, because it ain't going to get no squarer later. All right, so now for the legs. What I'm using here are just fine round rubber legs. And I've got 4 strands here. I'm going to take and divide those with just the tips of my scissors, just 2 to a side, like so. And I'm going to take 1 set and tie it in on my near side. I'm going to catch it right down along the side of the hook, and I'll wrap back over it right up to the base of the hump, like so. And I'll take the other set, and I'll just do the same thing in reverse order. My thread's hanging at the back, so I'll catch it there at the back, kind of square it up a little bit, right on the side. And then I like to just pull that leg back, run my thread forward, and catch it again. Those rubber legs are pretty limp, so they don't react to the thread torque as well as you might like, but you can kind of see what I'm getting there, and you can see how they're flat and those legs angle almost down a little bit. All right, now for the wing, I've just brushed out some white. I've tied these with Dun also, the smoke color, some white macrame yarn, and I'm going to take, on a size 10, a pretty good size clump of this, about like so. And I'm going to take this clump and move my thread back up to the hook eye. And I'm going to tie it in just behind the eye there, a little band of thread, and then I'll spiral wrap back over it right up to the front edge of the body and make another little band right there. Now I like to leave those pieces long for the time being. We'll trim them after the fact. but we're going to put a little bit of hackle in between. So what I want to do is I want to kind of smooth this base off, and we've got more chance to do that here as we fill this in with hackle. So I'm going to use, I've got this Cree neck sitting on my desk, so I've been using more and more of it. And one of the reasons that I'm going to use a neck hackle on this is a size 10 is a hard feather to find, you know, a big enough feather to be a size 10. So I'll be working off of a cape here, and I'm going to strip the butt end. So I've got some bare stem, and one thing I've started doing a little bit more of lately is stripping the inside of that turn just a little bit extra, like so, so that that first turn stands up nice and neat. Kind of a cheater method, but I do like the look of it. It just makes the fly a little cleaner. So I'm going to tie that hackle in right up at the base of the body of the hump, and then I'll bring my thread forward. And now I'm going to start to wrap this feather, and you can see with that bare turn, that feather's going to stand very upright as I start to wrap. And I want to try to get as many turns of this hackle in here as I can. And one of the catches, I don't like that, I'm going to unwind that and do it again. One of the catches with the neck feathers, you're going to run out of length, even with a big size 10. So you got to be a little diligent about where you're hanging onto the feather. Get in there. There we go. Right up to the base of the wing. And when I get there, I'm going to catch that with a couple turns of thread. And then I can cut that tip out. Now I'm going to lift up all that foam. And I've got a few strands of hackle. I don't know if you guys can see them right here. These are kind of sticking out in my way. Ultimately, I'm going to end up trimming the bottom of the hackle anyway, but I'm going to get those out of my way for the moment, just because I'm anal, and you guys know that. So no surprise there. Trim that last little one off. Get out of there. And then I'll come in, and I'm going to whip finish. And I'm going to whip finish up behind the eye. I'm going to block that piece of foam up just a little bit, prop it up just a bit with those thread wraps and that whip finish. And you can see how it's just buckled up out of the way for the moment. I can fold it back forward, kind of unbuckle it, like so. Now, the foam on the front end here, I'm going to cut, I'm going to say this is about 1/3 of a hook shank. Just cut it square across. And you can certainly come in and round those corners off. I like to leave that head square. What that does, having that little plane on the front, is when you mend this fly, that front edge keeps the fly from pulling down and diving in the water. It kind of keeps it where it'll skate. It'll twitch and wiggle a little bit better. So now this front wing, I'm going to cut about a shank length long, so I'm going to try to get a hold of it. And I'm going to go just kind of eyeball about a shank length. And this back end I'm going to cut short, so I'm going to pull it tight and just leave a little tuft on the back end. You can kind of see what we're doing. An interesting aside here, you can see I used that neck feather. Neck feathers are much more tapered than saddle feathers, but you can see how that hackle is bigger at the back than it is at the front. Really of no consequence here, but you know, something to keep in mind when you're tying flies with neck feathers, is they do very often have a bit of a taper to them, especially in those big sizes where you've got to get the extra length, which is what I did here. All right, so now for the legs, I'm going to come in and I'm going to separate them. I just use the tips of my scissors to separate these legs. On both sides. Oh, if I can get my scissor tip in there, there we go. Like so. And at first I want to leave them long, because what I'm going to do here is kind of come in with my, I've got a chartreuse color, lime green colored Letracet Pro marker is what this is, but you know, chartreuse green marker. Sharpie will work fine here too. And you kind of want to think of your overall length, because we want to make this green band toward the end of the legs. And I just use the marker and kind of make a wider green band. You in the case of the back legs, it's about maybe middle of the tail. You can see I just roll the marker back and forth. This will show better on your side here. And I'm not really stretching the legs much when I do this, a little bit, but not a ton. I think I need to be a little closer there. And I'll cap that marker out. Then I'm going to take a black Copic marker, and I'll do this near side first. I'll try to hold it on the screen, and I'm just going to roll it at either end of the green across both sides. And then I'll continue on down the leg, make 3 or 4 more bands. And I'll do that on all the legs. We just kind of made a little border on the green on this. And by all means, use the rotary function of your vise at this point. That's what you paid for. Might as well put it to use. Like so. So we've got those legs colored up. Now I'm going to come in with my scissors, and I'm going to trim those just at the end of that black bar that I've put on each leg. This one's a little long. So you see there, I cut the black tips off. I'll show you how to replace those. I like to let those dry a little bit before I touch them too much. If you take your black marker, you can actually get a hold of those legs and color that end up a bit more. I'm trying to do this without getting the ink on my fingertips, so I'm going to pull this tight. You can see I practiced a little bit this morning, and I got ink on my hands already, and I just scrubbed the tar out of them. So I'm going to stretch that leg and put another little black band there closer to the end just to even that up. Hope I didn't screw that up too much. God, I don't even know if official will eat that anymore, but let's get our focus back. And then the last thing we're going to do is come in and grab all this hackle on the bottom and trim that off flat. We want to just trim the bottom of the fly flat straight across, and that leaves us all that surface area from the hackle, but lets the fly sit a little lower. Now, one thing I also do, and this is one of the things I like about the macrame yarn, it doesn't really cut perfectly square. It's fairly ragged, but I'll very often kind of round the edges of that wing off. Kind of think calf tail. So I'm just kind of cutting at long angles toward the front. So there's some short and some long. I don't want it too manicured. Bring that back in there. Get you a little better focus. Get my leg out of the tail. And that is our Hippy Stomper. Now, one last thing that I like to do is I'll turn this fly upside down and put a little shot of super glue right down along the bottom of that hackle. That just really toughens that up. I've been doing that on a lot of flies like this. Anything that you trim the hackle on, it's very easy to put a little shot of super glue there along the bottom, and it just keeps that stem from ever breaking, which is great, because then you got a fly that doesn't come apart. You can catch all kinds of fish on the dang thing. So there we are. That's our Hippy Stomper from Andrew. And Andrew's got a bunch of cool stuff. I'll probably do more of it. We'll do the user-friendly, and his lowrider's already on the site. So, but that's the Hippy Stomper. Obviously tied in a bunch of different colors. Change the color of the flash and the second sheet of foam, the green foam. You could make red, yellow, purple, pink, any variety of colors. But that's where he comes from, and that's my friend Andrew's fly. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. I'm Charlie Craven.